The Corpse Collector. Penance. Part 1. To the Grave. Location: Carver 5. The Wishmaker tore down through the haze of Carver 5's upper atmosphere, carving a path through thick, grey clouds like a knife through sinew. Static crawled across the cockpit instruments. The planet below looked like a corpse long frozen in its own death rattle. Ice plains riddled with jagged ruptures and black veins of alien ore. Coffin Keeper sat in the pilot's seat, fingers light on the controls, humming a song only he remembered the words to. His voice was a low rasp under his breath, cracked from years of smoke and death. Behind him, Kevlar stood silently, massive arms crossed over his armored chest, watching the horizon without expression. "I hate this place already," Sweet said flatly, peering through the viewport. She adjusted her rifle's optic, eyes scanning the storm-lit terrain. "It looks like something died and the planet never forgot." Pirate didn't reply. He was connected, cables spooled out from his wrists and spine, linking him to the ship's systems and the 4 Revenant drones that buzzed silently behind him. His armor glowed faintly with pale blue light. His eyes, dim and artificial, flicked left to right as he ran diagnostics mid-descent. "We're being watched," Pirate finally said. "No satellites, no ships, no heat signatures except for the ones we were sent to recover," Coffin Keeper replied. "I wasn't talking about senses," Pirate muttered. "I can feel it in the code." The Wishmaker touched down on cracked ice beside the Pursuer and the Halcyon drift. The landing gear hissed, steam curling out into the dead air like breath from a corpse. Kevlar was first to step out, boots crunching over the ice. He scanned the landing site and paused as the figures approached, 3 corpse collectors, silhouetted by the low red glow of their ships. One form moved with purpose, weapon slung, helmet off, her face a canvas of exhaustion and fury. Glyph followed, slower, favoring one leg, a limp from a wound that had never fully healed. Metric kept pace at her side, helmet on, quiet as always. "We've got a problem," 1-4 said without preamble. "Carver 6 is a blackout zone. We can't punch a signal out, and anything we try to send is rerouted and buried." "You loaded the bodies?" Kevlar asked. "Every last one. Carver 5 was clean, routine. But this place," she gestured to the surrounding valley. "This wasn't part of the contract." Sweets narrowed her eyes. "Why were you even on Carver 6? "I wasn't," 1-4 snapped. "I was deployed to Carver 5. The coordinates were changed in transit. By the time we hit ground, we were too far in. Thought it was a reroute, but this was a trap. A silent system, 3 down beacons, and now this," Metric added. "Something doesn't want us calling home." Pirate approached without looking up from his holo display. "I scanned the Pursuer. You've got data from Carver 5. But there's a second signal buried beneath the logs. Something locked and spliced, like it was injected in transit. You didn't notice." 1-4's jaw clenched. Glyph looked away. "We noticed. We just didn't have time to dig into it. The bodies from 5 were clean, but we started picking up cross-contamination from somewhere else. Something old. We going to stand around whispering about ghosts?" Coffin Keeper called from the Wishmaker's ramp, "or are we going to talk about that beacon afterlife left?" At that name, the air changed. No one said anything for a beat. Sweets finally broke the silence. "You saw it too. Afterlife doesn't leave beacons unless something's worth dying over," Kevlar said. "Then we follow it," Pirate added. "Before whatever's jamming us decides we've overstayed our welcome." 1-4 looked to Glyph, then Metric. The 3 nodded. "Fine. We go together. The beacon's on bar 4, orbiting Grave Belt. You better be armed." "We were born armed," Kevlar said quietly. The orphans turned toward the Wishmaker. Behind them, clouds thickened over the broken bones of Carver 6. Something deep below the ice shifted, Watching, waiting. Location, aboard the Wishmaker. The hum of the ship was steady, background noise like a heartbeat. Kevlar stood in the weapons locker, methodically checking the seals on his armor, one gauntlet at a time. Sweets leaned against the opposite wall, watching him silently. "You don't talk much anymore," she finally said. Kevlar looked up, his expression unreadable. "Nothing worth saying." Sweets snorted. "You used to crack jokes. Remember that? I was 14. You laughed even when they weren't funny." "Because I was scared," she said flatly. "I thought if I laughed, I'd forget we were standing in loads of corpses half the time." Kevlar said nothing. He looked down at his hands. They were shaking slightly. "You think this is it?" Sweets asked. "You think we're not coming back?" He shook his head. "I think we never came back from the first time." Sweets walked over, pressed her forehead against his armored chest for a moment, then stepped away just as quickly. "I'm still here," she said. "So don't you dare die before I do." Location, aboard the Halcyon Drift. 1-4 sat on a bench in the dim-lit maintenance bay, holding her cracked forearm armor in one hand, a soldering torch in the other. The stress lines on her face had deepened since they landed. This planet had dug under her skin. Metric stood at the door, helmet tucked under one arm. Her short hair was damp with cold sweat, her eyes fixed on the cracked wall panel behind 1-4. "You should rest," Metric said quietly. "I'll rest when we're off this rock," 1-4 muttered, burning the edge of a split polymer seam. "If it lets us leave." Metric stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "You're blaming yourself. I led us there. You were redirected, but someone checking the log caught it in time. That's why we were sent." 1-4 set the torch down, finally looking up. "I was supposed to be on Carver 5. That was the mission. Someone changed my drop mid-jump. That doesn't happen by accident." Metric knelt beside her. "I know." 1-4's voice dropped. "Glyph almost died because of me. He's still limping from the last op and I dragged him out here to this cursed icebound. If something happens to him," Metric took her hand, tight and unyielding. "But he's alive. We're alive. Don't dwell on the past." 1-4 looked away. Metric leaned in closer. "You don't have to carry the guilt alone. That's what we're here for." 1-4 exhaled slowly, nodding once. Location, aboard the Wishmaker. The dim blue light of the engine bay flickered in pulses, reflecting off the smooth surface of Pirate's cybernetic armor. He stood still, suspended in mid-interface with a wall of data. One of his AIs, a small hovering disk, spoke softly in his ear. "Processing vessel diagnostics. All systems ready. Alien code remains partially encrypted." Coffin Keeper leaned against the wall nearby, arms crossed, just watching. "You ever miss being human?" Coffin Keeper asked out of nowhere. Pirate's voice was flat. "I'm more than human. That's not what I asked." Pirate disconnected with a hiss of decompressing ports. He turned toward Coffin Keeper, mechanical irises adjusting in the low light. "No," he said, "humanity is inefficient." Coffin Keeper chuckled. "And yet here you are, putting your life on the line for 3 other inefficient humans." "Not inefficient," Pirate replied. "Necessary." A pause. Then, "We were all saved by the same man. The Collector didn't pick us for what we were. He picked us for what we could become." Coffin Keeper nodded slowly, pushing off the wall. "Then let's become monsters. One more time." Location, engineering deck, aboard the Pursuer. The Pursuer's lights flickered again, then pulsed in a pattern that wasn't part of any diagnostic cycle. A low, garbled hum leaked through the overhead comms, like a voice trying to form words underwater. 1-4 moved with surgical purpose, fingers dancing across a flickering command console while Metric held open a service panel under the terminal. Glith stood nearby, shotgun slung but eyes scanning the room like the floor might open up and swallow them. Pursuer, confirm command sequence override, 1-4 said calmly. Command, rejected. Subsystems, rerouted to containment level 6. Specimens, awake, again, Metric said, the edge in her voice sharp. 1-4 tapped again, this time with force. Override Pursuer, initiate full subsystem shutdown and disengage AI control from Navcore. I am Pursuer, I am pursued, I see the cold between. Do not remove me. The lights surged red. One of the auxiliary maintenance arms jerked to life and slammed against its bracketed wall with a loud clang. Glith took 2 steps forward, gun raised, safety off. That's enough. Shut it down. 1-4 opened a side console and yanked the physical tether connected to the AI housing node. Metric was already typing into the secondary terminal. Spectra, Metric said sharply into her comlink, take control of the Pursuer's flight systems. Your job's doubled. Acknowledged. Routing nav and atmospheric control from Halcyon drift. Pursuer AI, contained. The vessel shuddered as its own nervous system was amputated. Inside the housing unit, the small, pearlescent AI core dimmed, flickering like a dying eye. 1-4 placed it into a black-coded containment sphere and locked it into an onboard vault under dual biometric seal. Metric didn't look away from the terminal. That's not residual corruption from the blackout field, she said. Something touched the AI here. Glith's voice was low, flat. Touched it or rewrote it. 1-4 locked eyes with him. It's not safe on its own anymore. The Pursuer's a risk until we clean its stem to stern. Tether it to the Halcyon drift. Spectra runs point until further notice. Metric nodded, already issuing the sequence. Tether engaged. Spectra, you're now flight lead for both ships. Understood. Configuring joint departure protocol. Pursuer AI functions locked. Drift now primary. Glith exhaled through his nose and set his gun down against the bulkhead. Feels like we're leaving something behind. We are, Metric said. The question is whether it stays buried. Glith glanced at his wife, then at the now dark housing core. I don't think anything wants to stay buried on Carver 6. They stood in silence for a moment, 3 veterans of too many dead missions, bound by trust, memories, and old wounds. 1-4 turned toward the exit. Prep all teams. I guess we leave for Bar 4 in an hour. Location, Grave Orbit. Location, Central Conference Chamber aboard the Halcyon Drift, 37 minutes before launch. The room was small, too small for what they carried. 7 veterans, each marked by scars, steel, or silence, stood around a circular holographic table displaying a 3-dimensional map of Var 4. A ring of dead satellites hovered in orbit, broken like a noose. Beneath them, the alien mothership rested like a buried god. The briefing had no leader, no rank. Just familiarity. 1-4 stood at the front, hands resting on the table's rim, her eyes dark and focused. So Afterlife dropped a beacon here, she said, a blinking red dot flashing at the base of the alien structure. He didn't stick around. Can't say I blame him. Metric nodded. Grave Orbit is unstable. The ship's either drawing power from the planet's core or leaking something into it. We don't know which. Sweets leaned against the wall, arms crossed. What about the blackout zone? Glith tapped on the table. Intermittent, but consistent. Comms drop. Drones vanish. The signal interference has a pattern, almost rhythmic. Like it's breathing. Pirate spoke next, voice mechanical with a synthetic undertone. Not natural. I've seen this waveform before. In corrupted signal AI from a core-adjacent structure. The kind that turns smart code into hungry code. Coffin Keeper snorted. So, we're walking into a haunted house where the ghosts speak binary. Kevlar said nothing. He watched 1-4 the whole time, like trying to see the shape of the storm behind her eyes. Metric's voice cut through. Here's how we play it. 2 teams. She tapped again. 2 vectors split from the holographic drop point, one leading through what looked like an open maw, the other through a narrow structural corridor. Orphans hit the north passage. You'll have more vertical movement and higher recon angles. Our team takes the lower route. It's denser, riskier, but closer to where Afterlife's beacon landed. Androids? Kevlar asked. 1-4 answered. 4, 2 each. Blood and Bone are still rebooting. They're not coming. Pirate nodded. Good, they've been off. Something tried to route around in their subroutines when we landed. Blith leaned forward. We'll deploy 32 Revenant drones. 12 outside, 20 inside. Mapping, recon, assist roles. It'll give us a complete picture of what you're looking at and a little extra coverage. Pursuers tethered, 1-4 added. AI is boxed after it went rogue. Spectra's flying both ships now. Spectra's voice echoed calmly from the table. I will guide your extraction. I will not enter the atmosphere without authorization. Keep transmission lines clean. Silence settled for a moment. Then Coffin Keeper clapped his hands. All right then. One last job before someone writes our names on a wall. I'll get the Wishmaker warm. As the group started to move, 1-4 stopped Kevlar with a glance. Hey, he turned. Don't make me drag your body out of another crater. He gave a rare half smile. Then you better keep up. Metric elbowed Glyph lightly as they passed. Still trying to impress the gravedigger. Glyph just smirked and kissed her forehead. Still trying not to lose you. The room emptied in pairs and silence. Spectra dimmed the lights behind them as they left, the orbital drift carrying them towards something ancient, waiting, and alive. Part 2. Orphans of Death. Location: Grave Orbit, VAR 4 above the alien mothership. The blackness of orbit gave way to broken clouds and flickering blue lightning as the 2 shuttles cut through the upper atmosphere of VAR 4. The world below was a scar, jagged canyons, fault lines that bled radiation, and in the center of it all, a towering alien vessel embedded into the crust like a blade through flesh. Spectra's voice buzzed softly in both cockpits. Approaching drop zone. Energy readings consistent with post-reactive stasis. The ship is dormant. For now. Location: aboard Shuttle 1, the Orphans. Kevlar sat nearest the door, his knuckles white against the magnetic restraints. Pirate sat directly across, his cybernetic eye streaming data, fingers syncing silently with the androids seated behind them. Sweets checked the optics on her rifle, then slipped a nicotine tablet between her lips. Do you have to do that before every drop? Pirate asked. Better than throwing up. You want me shooting straight or panicking about what's under us? Suit yourself. I've uploaded all known alien schematics. Syncing HUDs now. Coffin Keeper adjusted the shuttle's retrojets. We drop in silent, land on the dorsal flank and enter through the collapsed seam. If this place breathes, we're slipping in between heartbeats. Kevlar spoke for the first time. 1 heartbeat too late and we're bones. Location: aboard Shuttle 2, 1-4's team. 1-4 stood the entire descent, eyes locked on the horizon. She didn't blink as the mothership loomed larger. Not until Glyph reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Still with us? He asked. She nodded. I will be when we leave. Metric sat beside the shuttle's side hatch, checking drone diagnostics. All revenants are preloaded and armed with mapping protocols. They'll avoid confrontation unless directly attacked. 1-4 looked at her. Avoiding confrontation hasn't worked out too well lately. Glyph smiled without humor. We bring guns, we bring drones, we bring grit. Let's hope the ship is empty. No one agreed. Location: surface of VAR 4, exterior of the alien mothership. The two shuttles touched down on opposite ends of the gargantuan vessel. Its skin was dark alloy, shifting under the light like oil across glass. Ancient symbols pulsed dimly along its spine, like veins coming back to life. The air smelled of ozone and decay. The orphans exited first. Pirate deployed 2 of his androids, sleek, inhuman things with reactive plating and spinned limbs. Sweet scanned the horizon with her scope. Clear, no movement. Coffin Keeper opened a comm. Team 2, you reading? Reading. We're in position. Uploading first scan results. One Force team emerged from the other shuttle. Glyph held a repeater rifle in one hand and carried the Revenant drone uplink on his back. Metric released the first set, 6 drones that zipped forward, scanning corridors and vents in silent arcs. The teams regrouped at the designated breach point, a yawning fissure in the ship's side, big enough to march a tank through. Inside, the dark was oppressive. No wind, no sound, just a low mechanical hum, barely audible, like the ship itself was trying not to wake up. Sweets clicked on her shoulder lamp. Now it's a real horror story. Kevlar led the orphans into the upper corridor. 1-4 led her team into the lower decks. The drones scattered like insects, mapping as they moved. Each footstep echoed. Every wall whispered old secrets. Location: lower levels, alien mothership, Var 4. The lower levels of the mothership loomed around them, quiet as a tomb. No lights, no movement, just a low, pressurized hum vibrating up through the soles of their boots. The floor looked like it had once been metal, but now it resembled congealed mercury, shifting under pressure but refusing to smear or cling. 1-4 led the way, weapon drawn, while Glyph covered the rear and Metric walked center, scanner active. The 2 androids flanked the group in a silent mirror of discipline, heads panning slowly, arms lowered but ready. The walls were ribbed like exposed muscle tissue, pulsing softly with bioluminescence that didn't quite follow a rhythm. The light was embedded in the seams, more like veins than fixtures, casting strange shadows that moved even when the team didn't. Metric paused in a broad corridor, swept her beam across a chamber partially collapsed into itself. There are chairs, she muttered. Or at least, sitting places. Backward jointed, long torso support. This wasn't built for anything human. Glyph stepped forward, inspecting a slumped console nearly swallowed by organic growth. The panel looked dead, but it had a shape that suggested function, geometry under bone and sinew. It's not power that's missing, he said. It's will, like it's waiting for something. 1-4 stepped closer to a sealed doorway at the far end. As she neared, it opened with a hiss, no input, no scan, no warning. The room beyond was pitch black. Not dim, not shadowed. It devoured light. The beams from their shoulder lamps reached maybe a meter in before bleeding away into nothing. Metric took a half step forward, squinting. Can't read anything in there. Lights getting swallowed. No heat, no motion, no, nothing. 1-4 stared into the darkness a moment longer, then backed off and ordered the door closed. It hissed shut like the lungs of a dying creature. They kept moving. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. The walls changed subtly. Hexagonal geometry stretched into irregular spirals, then twisted back into something closer to bonework. The seams between the plating glistened with fluid. Not blood, not oil, something in between. The floor remained coated in that strange mercury-like substance. Every footstep triggered tiny ripples that never reached the edges of the corridor. One of the drones paused, camera locked on a section of wall that flickered for a second, just one, before returning to static calm. Metric glanced back. Something in the signal. The drone didn't respond. It resumed its path. They entered a large chamber, ceiling high and rounded, with bone-colored protrusions emerging from the floor like organic thrones. The chairs bent backwards, shaped for creatures that likely towered over humans and bent in ways that defied anatomy. Metric swept her scanner over one of the seats. There's residue. Dried. Organic. Might have been used recently, depending on how time works here. Glyph put a hand on the backrest of one and felt it twitch under his glove. It recoiled like sensitive skin. He pulled his hand back slowly. They didn't leave this place. They were pulled out of it, like it was mid-function. 1-4 moved to a nearby panel and touched it. The ship responded immediately. A vein of dim light pulsed outward from her point of contact, crawling through the wall like a nervous system reawakening. The hum under their feet deepened. Not a circuit, Metric said. A nerve cluster. You touched its spine. They all paused, weapons half raised, listening. Somewhere beyond the next corridor, something scraped wetly across the floor. They moved on, slower now, more deliberate. Every corridor beyond that point felt closer. The walls tightened. The ceilings dipped. The lighting turned dimmer. Even the androids started adjusting posture, arms tight against their sides. They passed through a corridor where the walls had changed again. Ribbed structure melted into layers of something like cartilage. Translucent, pulsing softly with light like a second heartbeat. Glyph whispered over the comm, "I don't like this." No one responded. They reached another sealed door. Unlike the others, this one had no panel, no seam, just a smooth, matte black surface with a faint warmth radiating from it. When 1-4 approached, it didn't open. It simply disappeared, faded away like smoke, revealing another room filled with blackness. No data, no reflection. The team stood at the threshold. "I hear something," Metric said. Not out loud. Inside. 1-4 didn't hesitate. "Mark this chamber. Tag it. Do not enter." She turned away. The door returned behind her without a sound. They moved back the way they came. The drones resumed scanning. Mapping stood at 2.5% complete, and the hum under their feet hadn't stopped. Location: upper levels, alien mothership, Bar 4. The airlock hissed open to a corridor of matte black bone and strange, glistening ridges that looked too deliberate to be random, and too organic to be engineered. Sweet stepped in first, rifle at her shoulder, boots placed with the practiced precision of a scavenger who's cleared out enough derelicts to know when something wasn't dead, just sleeping. Her breath misted in the low-temperature air, curling like smoke toward the ceiling. Behind her, Pirate's 2 androids fanned out in a perfect wedge. Each one was humanoid in frame, but armored in sleek, matte plating, their heads smooth domes of reinforced composite alloy. Their optics pulsed a soft amber in the low light. Silent, obedient, deadly. Kevlar brought up the rear, one hand trailing along the wall. The surface was smooth and curved, like polished obsidian carved into the shape of arteries. He paused. "Feels warm." Sweet stopped, eyes still scanning forward. "How warm?" Kevlar tilted his head. "Like blood, not metal." "That shouldn't happen," Pirate said from behind, voice low but certain. He held up a tablet, wired into the androids. "We're above any reactor line. Ambient temperatures uniform in the schematics. This section should be cold." One of the Revenant drones paused mid-hover. Its status light blinked, red for half a second, then returned to green. Pirate frowned and immediately dropped into a crouch, patching into the feed. "Hold on. I'll run diagnostics. Could be environmental interference or magnetic feedback. Could be something else," Sweets muttered. They pressed deeper into the corridor. At 6% mapped, the mothership had proven itself a sprawling labyrinth. The upper levels were oddly quiet, though filled with the remnants of intent, alcoves carved into the walls like ritual spaces, ribbed columns marked with clawed indentations, and floor plating that flexed ever so slightly with every step, as if they were being measured. At the next intersection, Sweets raised a fist. The team stopped cold. She scanned the shadows. The space split in 3 directions, and each corridor curved away without end. No doors, no lights, no vents. "Did you hear that?" she asked, voice tight. Kevlar shook his head. "No. It was like breathing," she said, "but the wrong kind. It was wet." They held still. Silence pressed down on them like a weighted blanket. One of the drones let out a brief static hiss over the internal comms, unintentional. Pirate's fingers moved across the screen. Drones are picking up inconsistencies. Sound dampening in this corridor's off normal. Might be engineered to suppress acoustic memory. Kevlar scanned with his visor. No motion, no heat, but this place is bleeding energy. Subsurface readouts look like pulsing capacitors. Sweets didn't lower her rifle. "This isn't a warship. It's a lung. And we're inside it." One of the androids twitched. An imperceptible shift in stance. Pirate noticed immediately and tapped a control node on his wrist. The androids froze. "What's wrong?" Kevlar asked. Reflex loop fired without command. They reacted to something, but didn't log it. Sweets stepped forward, one boot at a time, until she reached the intersection's edge. She leaned just enough to glance down the rightmost corridor. Her light landed on something curved, glossy, alien. Then it blinked. Just once. She sucked in a breath and immediately swept her weapon up, but by the time she re-aimed, the shape was gone. "I saw something." "Show me," Pirate said. His androids moved to flank her as the drone closest to the right corridor reoriented. Sweets stared down the empty space, jaw tight. "It was just looking, like it didn't expect me to see it." Pirate tapped through several interfaces. No signal disruption, but the drone missed it. Maybe it wasn't heat-based. Maybe it's shielding itself. Kevlar cursed under his breath. "We're not alone." They stood in silence again, rifles drawn, drones floating on whisper-silent anti-gravs. Pirate issued a soft-spoken command. "Drones 3 and 4, deploy passive infrared sweep and UV pulse. I want visual ghosting tagged." The drones obeyed, their lights flickering through different spectrums of color invisible to the naked eye. The corridor lit up in flashes of alien geometry and strange stains that hadn't been visible moments before. There were shapes, smears, movement trails. Not fresh, but not old either. Sweets didn't move. "Let's mark this zone," she said quietly. "We come back when we've got more data." "Agreed," Pirate responded. Kevlar clicked the safety on his sidearm off. "Or when we're ready to burn it." They moved on, heading left. Behind them, the corridor they just scanned slowly returned to stillness. But the warmth in the walls lingered. And one of the drones, Drone 4, logged something only Pirate would see in post-analysis: residual kinetic pressure. Pressure source, unknown. Timestamp, 3 seconds after exit. The next corridor sloped downward, but gently, just enough to feel it in their knees after a few minutes of silent trekking. The light from the gear illuminated the strange architecture ahead, walls that curved inward like a narrowing throat, their surfaces slick and patterned with faint striations that looked disturbingly like stretch marks. Kevlar muttered, "This whole place feels grown." "It probably was," Pirate replied, still eyes deep in a multitasking flood of data. "I'm picking up carbon chains in the wall material. But there's metal in the marrow. Hybrid construction. Biological alloys." Ahead, one of the androids raised a hand, halt gesture. The squad stopped. From the shadows beyond, a faint glow emerged. Not light in the usual sense, but bioluminescence, hidden in the walls, pulsing in slow, steady rhythm. It was like the ship was adjusting to their presence, testing different ways to see them. Kevlar drew closer to Pirate, keeping his voice low. "Do you think this thing's reacting to us?" Pirate nodded slowly. Or it's remembering us, cataloging. Sweets exhaled through her nose, her voice tight. Feels like we're being herded. The drone furthest ahead chimed once, a sonar ping indicating a room ahead. Cylindrical, large, and sealed. Probable junction chamber, Pirate said. Could be central, could be nothing. Sweets moved forward, rifle first, her silhouette lit from behind by amber optics, and Pirate screamed. The air had grown thicker. A subtle vibration, too low to hear, but felt in the bones, seemed to rise from the floor. As she approached the door, it opened. No sound, just a seamless parting of organic material, like skin parting to reveal flesh. They stared into a vast circular chamber. The walls pulsed. It was the only word for it, pulsed, with a rhythm almost like a heartbeat but slightly off, as though it belonged to something trying to imitate life. The room's floor dipped toward the center, and at that center was a structure, not a throne, not quite a cradle, more like a womb torn open, exposing a partially dissolved husk of something enormous and long dead. Around it were racks, spiraling like ribs or antennae, each holding desiccated remnants, mummified in glass-like resin, each one humanoid, but not human. Sweets took a cautious step in. This was a birthing room. Or a reassembly bay, Pirate said grimly, scanning the remains. Organic components grown around a framework. Cloned, cultivated. Kedler crouched by one of the racks, frowning. These things had cybernetics. Look. Sure enough, under the layers of dried tissue and crystalline casing, metal ridges and neural ports ran up along what looked like a spinal column, though in some of the bodies, there were more than one. Suddenly, all 4 Revenant drones froze midair. Their lights dimmed, then blinked in sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, and again. Sweets spun. Pirate. They're receiving something, he said quickly. An internal signal, not ours. He tapped the recall command. Nothing happened. Then, just as quickly as it started, the sequence stopped. The drones returned to normal, except now, each hovered 2 inches higher than before. A silent deviation. Kevlar was already moving to the exit. This room's wrong. Agreed, Pirate said, not taking his eyes off his interface. We'll tag it for review. Pull imaging, then purge local memory. No backups. Sweets nodded, moving fast to regroup. As they left the chamber, the lights in the walls behind them brightened for a moment, not from power, but in what looked like excitement. A brief, flickering pulse of red. Once outside, the door sealed behind them, again, without a command. This time, the seam where it met the corridor vanished entirely. Kevlar stared at the blank wall. Pirate said nothing, but added a new tag to the mapping log, note, morphing structure response, add to anomaly list. Sweets checked her rifle, adjusting the magazine with hands that were too steady to be natural. Next level, Kevlar grunted. Next level. As they walked, none of them noticed the faint handprint, human-shaped, pressed into the wall where Sweets had leaned minutes earlier. The wall flexed once, like lungs exhaling. Location, lower levels, alien mothership, VAR-4 mapping, 7.9%. The air changed the further down they went. Not colder, but heavier, laden with an invisible pressure that settled in the ears and at the back of the throat. Every breath carried a faint taste of copper, like the inside of a torn-up machine. Their lights, sharp and cold at the top levels, seemed to diffuse strangely here, soaking into the dark like cloth-soaking blood. Shadows didn't behave correctly, edges blurred, corners stretched longer than they should. The corridor forked, and the team followed a side passage that curved into a descending spiral. The walls here had transformed again. Less like ribbed muscle, more like bone, hollow, honeycombed with alcoves and narrow ducts too small for a person but too deliberate to be natural. Glyth swept ahead with his rifle up, helmet light strobing left and right. Getting some interference from the drones. Localized jamming, organic, maybe. Metric, running a scan behind him, muttered, "Every centimeter of this place screams built intelligence. Nothing here was random. Everything was grown with purpose. Even the silence." 1-4 moved with efficient grace, her voice calm but clipped. "I want full scans of this section logged manually. Relying on the automated feed is getting risky." "Understood," Metric replied, reaching a sealed maintenance panel near the floor. "This junction, similar to the one on Deck 18. Might lead to an access crawl or hardwire port. Open it carefully," 1-4 said, stepping back. Metric nodded. She knelt, keyed in a signal override from her wristpad, and the panel hissed open. She leaned forward. And something fell out. A body, tall, brittle, slamming against the floor in a sudden heap of segmented limbs and shattered resin. It had once been enclosed in a hibernation pod, the growth lines of its cocoon still etched into its back. Its face, long and insectile, jaw open as if mid-scream, was half shattered. Its chest had partially ruptured, exposing tubing that wrapped around bones and vanished into the corpse's throat like feeding lines. It gasped. A sharp, shuddering intake of air. All three flinched. Glyth had already raised his rifle before the noise died. "Not alive," 1-4 said, stepping forward. Her tone was measured, though her weapon was drawn. "Decompression. Just a pressure release. Old air caught in the pod." Metric stood quickly, brushing fragments off her arm. Her face was pale beneath her visor. "Still, if these are scattered in maintenance bays, we could be walking through a tomb built around sleeping ones." Glyth didn't lower his weapon. More like a mausoleum built by something that knew how to tuck its dead in deep. This wasn't neglect. This thing was preserved. The corpse twitched once, sagging as a spindly arm snapped free at the joint. The entire carcass was so dry it cracked as it collapsed further, and a low vibration passed through the floor beneath them. Not motion, not footsteps. A hum. From deeper below. 1-4 tapped her comms. "Log that body. Metric, tag it and upload the local data to the Halcyon drift. Don't touch anything else unless we're sure what it is." Metric hesitated. "You think we triggered something?" 1-4's helmet tilted slightly, gaze distant, listening. "No, I think we're being welcomed." Glyth took point again. "That's not better." They moved on, but slower now. Deliberate, watching every seam and panel like it might breathe or bleed. One of the drones above them clicked once. The others repeated the same pulse in a descending wave, as if sinking. Then silence again. Far behind them, the pod from which the corpse had fallen sealed itself closed. No sound, no movement, just smooth surface where once there had been a seam. The ship had taken note. They pressed further down a corridor that sloped at a shallow but persistent angle, as if they were moving deeper into the gut of something vast and sleeping. The walls began to breathe. Not literally, but the visual suggestion was undeniable. The bone-like ridges now expanded and contracted with rhythmic precision, casting undulating shadows across their path. They never touched the team, but they created a hypnotic strobe that made depth hard to judge and stillness impossible to trust. Metric tapped at her wristpad. "This isn't life support function. It's not mechanical. It's environmental behavior. The ship is mimicking life. Or remembering it," Glyth said grimly. He paused to examine a bulkhead, one that had a surface like cartilage. Something inside pulsed once. He stepped back. 1-4 kept her attention forward. "Keep moving. Forward recon only. No samples until we reach a clear node." They came to a junction. 4 passageways splayed like a fan, each lined with fine organic wiring that resembled nerve tissue. The floor beneath them subtly changed texture again, from the congealed mercury slick to something softer, like padded mesh that gave just enough to make one doubt their step. The drone team halted as a ping echoed from the forward path. One of the revenants turned its optics downward, scanning something at the far end of the hall. Nothing visible. Metric slowed, whispering, "I'm getting interference in the visual spectrum. Almost like feedback on an old optic lens. There's something down that hall. Something or someone?" Glyph asked. "Unclear." 1-4 walked forward and raised her hand. The first drone advanced. 20 meters. 40. At 50 meters, the corridor ahead bent. Not architecturally, it warped, as if viewed through water or heat shimmer. The geometry twisted in on itself. The drone flickered, its feet to the HUDs momentarily scrambled, then cleared. And there it stood. A structure in the middle of the corridor. Spire-like, not machinery, a throne of some kind, its base fused into the floor. It had no occupant, but the impression of one was clear in the way the material was shaped, like something enormous and insectoid had sat there long enough to melt the metal around it. Symbiont architecture, Metric whispered, grown around a central presence. But this isn't a command post. It's ceremonial. Glyph glanced at her. What kind of ceremony needs a throne in a tunnel? 1-4 didn't answer. She was staring at the wall beside the throne. The material there was different, not bone, not wire, but something translucent. Inside were more pods. 13 of them, all dark, all sealed. Metric, she said. Thermal imaging. Metric brought up the overlay. Her hand hovered mid-motion. Then her voice dropped. 6 of them are warm. Glyph raised his weapon instantly. You said this level was inert. It is. She hissed. The others are cold. These aren't active. They're dormant. 1-4 took a long, slow breath. If they're alive in there, we don't touch them. We finish this run, send the data up, and get a quarantine line drawn here. Spectra can forward the beacon data. We don't wake something we can't put back to sleep. Glyph nodded. Agreed. Metric took one more scan and turned away, but not before her visor caught a glimpse of movement behind the translucent shell. A single motion, like fingers, tapping on glass. She didn't mention it. They moved on. The corridor ahead narrowed. The floor's soft padding shifted to something like scaled hide, and the walls began sweating condensation, milky and warm, running in threads that glowed faintly green. They passed a series of hanging constructs, sacks, suspended by fibrous tendons. Organic, some ruptured, some intact, one still twitched. Revenant drones logged the location and shape but didn't interact. 1-4's voice came low over comms. We're pulling back after we clear the next bend. We're deep enough. Anything further requires heavier ordnance and more support. Metric didn't argue. Glyph was already walking slower, eyes locked forward. They turned the corner, and stopped. At the far end of the corridor, about 30 meters away, something stood. Tall, thin, facing away, its surface the same mottled chitin and sinew as the walls. It didn't move, didn't breathe, like a sentinel, or a sculpture. Metric tried to scan it. The signal bounced back scrambled, inverted and red. Statue, Glyph offered. I don't know, 1-4 said. They didn't go closer. They marked it, logged it, and turned back. Behind them, the sentinel never moved. But the drone's rear optics recorded something strange. The wall behind it exhaled. Part 3. Extraterrestrial passing. Location: Wishmaker orbiting VAR 4. Time elapsed: 5 hours since infiltration. The Wishmaker hovered in low orbit above VAR 4, her matte black hull blending into the endless void. Below her, The alien mothership squatted across the ruined plain like a sleeping beast, half buried, half awake. Scarred by age and monolithic in scale. Inside the cockpit, Coffin Keeper sat alone, visor lowered, boots propped up, a half-finished protein ration floating weightless beside him. His armor was unbuckled at the neck. He stared silently at the holographic readout before him, drones blinking across the map like fireflies tracing veins in a carcass. 5 hours, he muttered to no one. 5 hours, 19 minutes, and 13 seconds, technically, came the dry voice of Normal, the Wishmaker's AI. Smooth, neutral, and as unobtrusive as the name implied. Not correcting me wins you more friends, Coffin Keeper replied, chewing slowly. I am not in the friend-making business. No, you're in the, don't get me killed, business. Speaking of, you said something about space distortion. Correct. I've been monitoring the outer perimeter of the grave orbit. There is an anomalous shift in the local gravity well. Mass displacement. No identifiable source. Coffin Keeper straightened. Another ship. No propulsion trails. No heat signature. But something is there, like a shadow beneath folded space. Something that bends starlight without mass. Coffin Keeper stood, kicking off gently toward the forward interface panel. He braced himself on the rail and peered into the black. Nothing. Just stars. Bar 4 below. The mothership, a slowly breathing silhouette. Keep tracking it. I already am. But it's staying just outside sensor fidelity, like it knows our range. That's not encouraging. Before he could press further, a series of chimes rippled through the cockpit. Mapping complete. External drones have finished primary topographical scan. Structural mapping uploaded. Coffin Keeper reached over, pulling up the newly generated schematics. A full render of the mothership unspooled like a beast's autopsy. Upper levels, lower catacombs, the buried spine. Glowing corridors. Pulsing chambers. Mapping status, 53.6%. Finally, he muttered, swiping the data into a compressed burst. Transmit package to both teams, he ordered. And flag potential escape vectors. Prioritize hot zones based on radio silence, biometric stress readings, and any anomalous temperature spikes. Done, Normal replied. They now know more than they did 5 seconds ago. Coffin Keeper floated back to the command seat, locked in, and stared at the growing static around the edge of the display where the anomaly had first blinked into detection. Let's just hope they make it to 100%, he said. Beneath the Wishmaker, the alien mothership remained motionless, but the data stream now carried more noise than signal. Something down there was starting to respond. Location, lower levels, alien mothership. The corridor behind them was gone. They'd doubled back, 1-4 was short of it. Metric had marked it with a thermal blade. A long, scorched groove in the fleshy wall. But now that same corridor opened into a vaulted chamber none of them remembered passing through. The groove was missing. The walls had changed color, from bruised purple to oxidized copper, and the ceiling was lower, almost too low, slick with condensation. This isn't the path we came in from, Blitz said quietly, raising his rifle and turning in a slow, controlled circle. I know, 1-4 answered. Don't trust anything familiar. The atmosphere was colder, not by temperature sensors, those still read ambient, but in the way sound behaved. Every footstep echoed too long. Every breath felt stolen from something else. Doorways no longer opened for them. Some refused entirely, requiring Metric to splice control nodes hidden behind bone-like panels. One door throbbed faintly as she approached. Not mechanical, organic. I don't like this, Metric said as she worked. Her fingers were gloved but shaking. This is the third interface node with a changed pattern. It's learning us, or unlearning its rules. Above the archway they now faced, Unfamiliar symbols had replaced the expected geometric glyphs. These ones seemed cut into the walls, not drawn, not etched. Torn, as if the ship remembered something painful, and scarred itself to mark it. 1-4's voice was steady but cold. These marks weren't here before. They're not for us, Glyph muttered. They're warnings. Metric's uplink pulsed quietly in her HUD. Mapping progress, 61%. Good, 1-4 said, her tone sharper. Let's be done before something changes its mind about letting us in. As if on cue, the door hissed, not open, but closed, behind them. They turned. The passage they had just walked through had sealed itself, the wall seamless now. No visible break, no interface node. Glyph stepped up to it, hand pressed flat. Still warm, just fused shut. We're not welcome here anymore, Metric said. No, 1-4 replied. We never were. The corridor ahead pulsed, faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Or like breathing. Every surface glistened slightly. The light seemed more organic now, shifting tone subtly as they moved. Violet to gold, gold to red. Proceed, 1-4 ordered, quietly. They moved forward again, but it wasn't just the paths that had changed. The smell was different now. Faint, acrid, like copper and wet soil. Glyph's rifle was up constantly now, his fingers always on the trigger guard. Metric didn't even bother logging findings anymore. She just kept one hand on the wall, tracing it softly, grounding herself as the logic of the ship slipped further from them. Ahead, another door. No glyphs, no seams, just a line of teeth, recessed in the ceiling, as if the entrance might close like a jaw. Bypass, 1-4 asked, already reaching for her toolkit. No, Metric whispered. I think this one wants us to knock. They bypassed the jawed door. Rather than force it open, Metric rerouted their path using Revenant drone data. But every alternate passageway they took felt less like a detour and more like a trap. The corridors now curled at impossible angles. One sloped so sharply downward they had to brace themselves against the walls to descend safely. The walls were changing again. Veins had begun to pulse just beneath the surface, thick and black. The sound of their boots was drowned out by an underlying thrum, like a slow drumbeat echoing through bone. The floor tiles began to give under their weight, softening subtly as if the ship resented being walked on. Map says this should lead to a data spine or relay node, Metric said, voice tight. Assuming this place still follows its own layout. It doesn't, Glyph said. It's improvising. 1-4 didn't disagree. They passed a collapsed section. Organic girders twisted inward like ribs crushed by blunt force. Something big had moved through there. Recently, the ichor was still wet on the walls. Beyond the wreckage, they entered a chamber where the ceiling was twice as high, but tapered to a sharp, spear-like point at the center. It was quiet. The ship's ambient hum faded. Too quiet. Metric lifted her scanner. It was dead. Signal blackout, she said. Drones are still relaying, but I'm not receiving any direct feed. This space is blind. We're being funneled, Glyph said, watching the single doorway on the far end of the chamber, rounded and toothless, like a sphincter held open. 1-4 stepped forward and paused. Hold. She raised her rifle. There was a shape in the doorway. Just standing there. No movement, no sound. A tall figure, long limbs, thin, with elongated arms that ended in digits which brushed the floor. Its head was low, almost recessed between its shoulders, facing downward. Don't move, 1-4 said quietly. The figure twitched, then melted, liquefied into the floor like mercury and vanished through the seams. Negative contact, 1-4 said, eyes still locked on the space it had occupied. But something is aware of us. Something's curious, Metric added. That's worse. They continued forward, weapons up, light sources lowered to reduce reflections. The architecture now bore scars, deep gouges along the wall that looked neither accidental nor functional. Something with claws, something territorial. Another corridor, this one moaned when they stepped in. Not metaphorically. A long, slow exhale from the walls themselves. Every step they took triggered a ripple of motion in the ceiling membrane. "I feel like we're walking through a lung," Glyth muttered. They reached a choke point where the ceiling dipped so low they had to crouch. 1-4 took point, crawling through with weapon in one hand, flashlight beam trembling over wet, cartilage-like walls. As she emerged into the next chamber, her foot slipped. Her hand shot out. She caught herself. The floor here was not solid. She was kneeling on something soft, pliable. She adjusted her light. Beneath her was a sea of hibernation pods. Rows of them, stacked like cocoons. Hundreds, maybe thousands. The membrane she stood on was a protective film stretched across the top. Most pods were blackened and inert, long dead. But not all. Some flickered with faint amber light. One pulsed. Glyth climbed out next, followed by Metric. They paused, taking in the view. "Do we step over them?" Metric asked quietly. "No," 1-4 said. "We find a route around. I'm not waking a thing." She pulled up her HUD, overlaying the drone scan with what they could see visually. "We're close to a communications branch. If there's anything left of a command node, it's there." Glyth scanned the far end of the chamber. "No obvious exits. No obvious ones," 1-4 replied. "But this place has a talent for showing you what it wants you to see." They crept along the narrow ridge formed by hardened biological scaffolding. The way down into the field of pods was steep, like descending into a nest. And the further they went, the more they felt it, the pressure. Not just atmospheric, psychological, an awareness. They were being watched. Location, alien mothership, upper levels. They moved in formation now. Sweets took point, rifle up, every step deliberate. Her breathing was even, but her knuckles were pale against the weapon's grip. Pirate walked just behind her, his HUD flickering with data streams from the androids and drones fanned out around them. Kevlar brought up the rear, constantly checking their flank. The air was changing, not just the temperature, though it had dropped by nearly 6 degrees in the last corridor, but the quality. It had grown heavier, like walking through water, like something unseen was brushing against their skin in micro movements. "This corridor wasn't here before," Kevlar said quietly. Pirate nodded. "I know." The map adjusted. 32 seconds ago. "Drones are syncing again now." "Shifting layout?" Sweets asked. "No, worse," Pirate replied. "This place is evolving its logic." Kevlar scowled. "Say that again in English." "It means the ship's spatial protocols aren't fixed. We're not just dealing with architecture. We're inside a process." Sweets halted at the next intersection. Clear. But the wall to her left wasn't. It rippled. A smooth membrane flexed outward, just a little, like something inside had pressed against it. Then it stopped. Still. Seamless again. Kevlar raised his weapon. Sweets didn't blink. "Keep eyes on the walls," she said. "They're watching." One of Pirate's androids suddenly stopped walking. It tilted its head. "P3's picking up a bandwidth leak," Pirate muttered. "Infra-low frequency pulse. No pattern. It's like static, but it's not random." Kevlar didn't like the sound of that. "It's trying to talk." "No," Pirate said. "It's thinking." They moved on. The corridors ahead bent sharply downward. The angle made walking difficult. At several points, they had to slow and descend in side steps, boots sliding slightly on the smooth biomechanical flooring. It looked like black glass but felt like cartilage. Each step echoed wrong. Sound bounced and returned distorted, like someone else was walking behind them, one pace delayed. Then, hold. Sweets threw up her fist. All movement stopped. She crouched and pointed ahead. A door, different from the others. Smaller, rectangular, human-shaped. It shouldn't be here. Pirate frowned. That wasn't on the map. It's not just new, Kevlar said. It's ours. The door was made of cold steel. Old Earth design. Worn by atmosphere, chipped by radiation. On its center panel, barely visible under grime and mossy growth, was the corpse collector insignia. They approached slowly. Sweets touched the surface with the barrel of her rifle. It's real, she muttered. Kevlar examined the seams. But it shouldn't be. This ship predates our species by thousands of years, right? Pirate said nothing. His androids formed a perimeter. One by one, their optics began to flicker blue. Then purple. Then black. Pirate's voice dropped. Something's interfacing. Kevlar aimed at the door. Sweets reached for the latch. Don't, Pirate began. But it opened on its own. Behind it, blackness, but not emptiness. A long corridor stretched beyond the threshold. Lights along the base flickered like fading breath. The walls inside were lined with mirrors. Tall, full-length panes that reflected not what stood before them, but something else. Not them. Not human. Kevlar's voice was a whisper now. This isn't a door. It's a lure. I've got no data on the interior, Pirate said. The drones can't see inside. It's dead space. They stood on the threshold, the pull of curiosity clashing with the warning of instinct. Sweets stared at her own reflection in the mirrored corridor. But it wasn't looking back. The thing that looked like her was smiling. She didn't move, but her reflection tilted its head, just slightly, and blinked twice. Kevlar pulled her back. We're done here. Pirate issued a hard ping through the androids, forcing a system reset. All optics went green again. Mark the location. But we don't go in. They continued forward, away from the false door, away from the impossible corridor. Behind them, the door slowly closed. No sound, no hiss, just silence. They descended a vertical shaft to reach it, one of the few areas not reconfiguring itself. The climb down was quiet, too quiet. Even Pirate's drones transmitted less noise than before. Their servos moved slower, like the gravity was wrong here. Or time was thicker. Sweets hit the base of the shaft first, rolling to a crouch. Clear. She stopped. Kevlar dropped beside her, hand on her shoulder. What? She pointed. Ahead was a vast chamber, cathedral tall, and lined in concentric rings of crystalline pillars. Floating filaments like nerves webbed the open space, each twitching with pulses of dim light, information. The floor below was a basin, bowl-shaped, lined with sockets and semi-organic terminals. In the center, the data spine rose like a stalactite flipped upside down, twisting, semi-transparent, humming like an old mechanical heart. It's not just data, Pirate said, descending last, his androids behind him. It's memory. He walked to the edge of the basin and crouched. One of the androids stepped forward, detached a neural probe from its spine, and connected it to the socket beneath them. The hum rose. The filaments above twitched in sequence. Kevlar raised his rifle. You sure that was smart? Too late, Pirate muttered. We're already inside it. The central tower glowed faintly blue now, a pulse cycling from the bottom upward like an elevator shaft made of thought. Sweets approached slowly. Her voice was quieter than before. Does this place feel sacred to anyone else? Kevlar nodded. Like walking into someone's soul. No, Pirate said. Not someone's. Something's. The data spine activated. Not all at once. Just one memory at first. A nearby wall lit up, surface fracturing into layers of flickering images, alien movement, impossible star charts, the dissection of something vaguely human-shaped. Screams, numbers, binary and flesh merged. Sweets flinched. Kevlar stepped between her and the wall. Pirate didn't blink. It's remembering us. Another wall lit up. This time, the core. Not as it was, but as it's becoming. The black spire in the center of the galaxy, blooming with nanite tendrils, reaching into rift space. Pirate's heart pinged furiously. That's weird, he said under his breath. I don't like these readings. Sweets pulled back. So what is this thing? A relay. A brain. Kevlar looked up at the dark vaulting of the data spine. A graveyard that learned how to dream. One of the drones chirped in alarm. Then another. Then another. Red pulses. Movement. North vector. 4 returns, Pirate said sharply. Fast. Unmapped tunnels. Sweets swung her rifle toward the far entrance. Kevlar took the opposite side. The filaments above began to writhe. Pirate disconnected the probe. We're pulling out, but we just got here, Sweets said through clenched teeth. This place isn't trying to keep us out anymore, Pirate replied. It wants to trap us in. The reflections in the crystalline pillars started to shimmer. For a second, they thought it was just their own faces, distorted. But then the reflections moved before they did. Kevlar stepped back. We're leaving, now. They moved fast, pulling out of the basin and up the shaft. One of the drones was left behind for coverage. It recorded 5 seconds of distorted visuals before the screen went black. Back in the corridor, Kevlar slammed the hatch shut behind them and hit the magnetic seal. Sweets exhaled. We just pissed off the spine. Pirate was already keying in a transmission to Coffin Keeper. Update the map, he said flatly. We found the heart, and it's dreaming about us. We need to regroup and leave. Part 4. A strange dissolution. Location, lower decks, alien mothership. Everything happened at once. The corridor ahead forked sharply, each path a living tube, walls damp and pulsing like they'd just exhaled. Ridges curled over the ceiling like collapsed ribs, and what should have been bulkhead partitions looked more like scarred cartilage. Glyph hesitated at the junction, scanning. Left's thicker atmosphere, maybe gravity variance. Right, thermal blooms. Something's been. The walls convulsed. Not figuratively, literally. The left corridor tore open down the middle, peeling back like a wounded throat. Flesh-like membrane split with a sound like wet silk, and something poured out, a flood of twisted limbs and gleaming carapace, crawling with hunger and rage. The drones shrieked a red warning on the HUD, but too late. The first android was caught mid-turn and bisected at the waist, its lower half folding in on itself as its upper body spasmed in electric death. Actuators sparked, legs still twitching. Contact left. 1-4 snapped, diving behind a bulging structure that pulsed like a heart under her shoulder. A claw burst from the ceiling, splitting through plated overhead as a beast dropped like a spear, its limbs ending in jagged points, mouth vertical, like a sea creature exposed to a vacuum. The second android turned to fire, but the creature was faster. Its arm punched through the android's chest, lifting it off the deck and impaling it like decoration. Glyph opened fire before it could twist. His ion rifle hulled, burning a molten hole through its upper torso. The beast shrieked in a series of clicking hulls before collapsing in a heap of smoking chitin. He didn't make it 3 steps before a claw caught his side. He turned and shot point blank, ion rounds blowing off half the creature's head, but not before its talons ripped through his armor, leaving him bleeding, shaking, but standing. Then another one of them slashed Glyph. Claws scraped through his armor like it was paper. Blood sprayed as Glyph staggered back, rifle clattering to the floor. He didn't fall, not yet. Glyth. Metric lunged, catching him around the waist, pulling him back with one arm while her other hand fired burst after burst into the dark. More shapes spilled from the opening. Walls bulged and convulsed, seams stretching as if reality itself was splitting open to let them through. 1-4's voice was cold, practiced. Hard path, marked, fall back, move. 1-4 yanked a grenade from her belt, threw it into the corridor behind them, and the explosion painted the walls with burning ichor. But it barely slowed the horde. Her wrist flicked up a blue waypoint across their visors, a winding fallback corridor 6 levels up, past the skeletal remains of what looked like a gestation chamber. They ran. The 2 remaining drones buzzed overhead, cutting light and sound through the air as they opened suppressive fire. Plasma stitched lines across the hallway, but the monsters kept coming. Fast, wrong-shaped. Some crawled like dogs. Others slithered. One moved by spasming like a centipede made of glass. One of the drones went dark in a single frame, gone, swallowed in the blur of a translucent creature with impossibly long teeth. Drone down. Metric gasped. Only one left. No time to mourn. No time to think. 1-4 yanked a frag from her hip, primed it with a twist, and lobbed it behind them as they rounded the corner. Thump, click, detonation. The air compressed, and a storm of gore splattered down the passage, walls painted in molten black and violet. But behind the smoke, the shriek of the horde only grew louder. They weren't fighting a nest. They'd stirred a hive. That's when the orphans hit the deck like an exhaled vengeance. Kevlar, Pirate, Sweets, Pirates drones. The hallway ahead lit up with synchronized muzzle flashes, plasma arcs streaking between the ribs of the corridor. Pirates combat androids dropped in formation, locking the avenue with overlapping kill zones. Their optics glowed amber, synchronized like a hive of steel. Pirate's voice came through the comms, calm, surgical. "We heard you knocking." Sweets emerged from the haze, rifle already hot, eyes scanning for new targets. She didn't flinch as a creature lunged at her, just snapped up her sidearm and put a shot directly through its open mouth, splattering the wall with acidic foam. Kevlar reached Blith, hoisting the larger man over his shoulder like he was weightless. "Bleeding bad," he grunted. "We've got to get him out, now." 1-4 didn't slow. Spectra, prep extraction, remote control. Route the pursuer to command. Send what we have. Pirate overlaid a new path, corridor rerouted to connect them to the Halcyon Drift shuttle bay. A detour, but safer. The drone AI handled suppression, laying down explosive nodes that thumped in waves of concussive force. Behind them, the horde shrieked again, more alien voices joining in, layers of sound that weren't meant to exist in shared airspace. Kevlar and Sweets covered the rear. Pirate guided the drones. Metric whispered thanks. Blith, barely conscious, led onto Kevlar's shoulder but stayed silent. And 1-4. She never looked back. Location, orbit above Var 4, corpse collector vessel, the Wishmaker. Coffin Keeper leaned forward in the pilot's cradle, black-gloved fingers tapping across the holo panel. The Wishmaker's canopy dimmed automatically, shielding his eyes as a flare of radiation bloomed just beyond the outer orbit. He narrowed his gaze. The anomaly hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. "Normal, I need a confirm. What's the disturbance portside, 380 by Mark 9? The AI's voice came filtered through a strange distortion. Smooth, offbeat, too calm. Confirming anomaly. Spectral reading, artificial. Propulsion, unknown. Trajectory, intercept. Intercept. Coffin Keeper gritted his teeth. That fast. Normal didn't respond for 0.7 seconds. A lifetime for an eye. Yes. Coffin Keeper swiveled his command chair toward the external tactical suite, where the Wishmaker's long-range sensors fed raw light through gravitational interpretation. The screen blurred as something shifted space like it was silk, No identifiable structure, just movement and mass and intent. Wrong. All ground units, this is Keeper. You've got an inbound, unknown contact. Not a signal ghost. It's real, and it's coming fast. Suggest full withdrawal. There was a pause on the comm. Sweets. Say again, coffin. 1-4. Cutting in. We're already in full retreat. What kind of contact? Coffin Keeper didn't answer. He was already moving. The Wishmaker's thrusters flared into a slow roll as he rerouted power from the silent side cannons into a mixed formation maneuver, part defense, part charge. The vessel trembled. Normal. Launch drones 11 and 12. Combat override. You're flying them. Affirmative. Engaging. Twin hatches under the vessel's undercarriage slid open, and 2 sleek Predator-class fighter drones dropped into space like shadows. Normal's control net shimmered in Coffin Keeper's HUD, synaptic bridges linking drone reflexes to AI intent. They launched, arced toward the anomaly, and vanished. Not exploded, not even disrupted. Gone. 2 blips blinked off the board like they'd never existed. Coffin Keeper sat back. For a moment, the hum of the Wishmaker's systems seemed too loud. Like he was suddenly breathing in a room that had gone dead quiet after a scream. Normal. No telemetry. They didn't die. They were displaced. Meaning I don't know where they are. Another long silence. Then Coffin Keeper whispered into his comm. Update your evac plans, all teams. We're not alone up here. He didn't wait for a response. The Wishmaker's thrusters flared again as he locked the railguns forward, preparing for a fight he couldn't see. Location: alien mothership, mid-deck corridor, extraction funnel. The corridor groaned. Not from stress or battle damage, but like a thing trying to wake up. Then it split. Pirates' drones were already moving, reacting faster than any human could. 6 units advanced in perfect coordination, weapons raised. Bright arcs of plasma lanced through the gloom. The first wave of alien creatures rushed the choke point, writhing, skittering things with serrated limbs and open mouths where faces should be. Some moved sideways like crabs. Others hovered, ignoring gravity entirely, riding electromagnetic distortions like fish through water. Suppressive pattern Delta Tau, Pirate barked. His voice was calm, clinical. The drones shifted formation instantly, overlapping fields of fire. A shimmering blue arc spun out from Volt, electrocuting a cluster of creatures mid-leap. Spectre dove low, spraying twin-linked ion bolts into the oncoming mass. One drone was briefly engulfed but fought clear, servos hissing and smoking. Above them, Sweets lay prone on a half-collapsed hull panel, using her elbow for balance, her breathing steady. Her rifle exhaled thunder in measured pulses. Every shot was a kill. 20 meters, she said into comms. You've got 20 meters of corridor, then it gets narrow. You stall there, you die there. Pirate's AI team kicked in fully, Harmony syncing the drone's movements, core rerouting power to shields, null sweeping for cloaked signals. Link complete. Pirate confirmed. His eyes flashed with neural sync pulses. Full AI command engaged. Hold the line. Below the firing line, Kevlar barreled through smoke and broken tech. He spotted Blith slumped against a torn console, blood pouring from the gap in his armor. A claw had opened him up like a split fruit. Kevlar didn't slow. He bent, hauled the man up with one arm, flipped him over his shoulders like a soldier's pack. Blith grunted in pain but stayed conscious. I've got him, Kevlar roared. Fall back, now. 1-4 emerged from a side corridor, dragging Metric by her good arm. The back of Metric's armor was hissing, acidic damage flaring as it tried to self-repair. She stumbled but nodded to Kevlar, signaling she was still functional. The corridor behind them screamed with movement. Not voices, not rage, mass. things moving in a volume that shouldn't fit the space. Paths clear, Pirate called from the drone line. But not for long. You've got 30 seconds before the next wave hits. Sweets dropped 3 more targets, then holstered her rifle and slid down the wreckage with practiced speed, her sidearm already barking. Move, move. One of Pirate's drones, Core, detonated a thermal charge as it was overtaken, buying seconds at the cost of its own chassis. The fireball turned part of the corridor white with heat. Behind it, shadows regrouped. 1-4 turned back once, checked the rear flank, and threw a spike mine onto the deck. Delay charge. 2 seconds. Boom. The hallway shuddered. Screams, unholy and inhuman, echoed through the hull like sonar trapped inside a ribcage. The team moved in tight formation, drones flanking, Sweets rear guarding, Kevlar bearing glyphs weighed like it was nothing, and Pirate walking backward, face lit by cascading data from his internal HUD. Extraction point confirmed, Harmony said into Pirate's neural link. Final fallback corridor, 28 meters. They had seconds, but they were still breathing, and for now, that counted as winning. The walls of the corridor pulsed like a throat trying to swallow. Every step forward was matched by fresh movement in the shadows, slick clicks, low vibrations, the sound of muscle sliding over metal. Lights flickered without source. The floor turned glassy beneath their boots, slick with some kind of blood or fuel or both. Sweets led with her rifle, cutting down a leaping shape that screamed midair. We've got hostiles ahead, flanking left, 2, no, 4. God, they're fast. Pirate's drones moved with near-human intent, reacting without needing instruction. Harmony rerouted command flow on the fly as another unit dropped to a slashing tail spike. I'm losing drones, Pirate growled. We're bleeding metal. Not just metal, 1-4 answered. Her voice was cold, distant. She fired a slug through the skull of something that resembled a skinless wolf with too many eyes. Hold your line. From the ceiling, a horror dropped. One of the creatures with translucent skin and shifting bones, its maw opening vertically, as if unhinging along 2 axes. It landed on Sweets. Kevlar spun and fired mid-run, rounds chewing through the creature's side. Pirate stepped up, sending a drone to engage, but the thing shrugged off the first impacts. Sweets rolled beneath it, flipped her blade up, and shoved it into the thing's throat. With a hiss of black fluid, the creature staggered back, and the drone fired point blank into its core, blowing it apart. I'm fine, Sweets barked, already up. Move. The corridor behind them boiled. Creatures now poured in from the walls, the ceiling, the vents. Dozens of limbs, dozens of eyes. Some screamed, others clicked like shattered glass grinding together. Pirate threw a satchel mine down. EMP burst. Cover your optics. Boom. Blue-white light filled the corridor. The creatures stalled, if only for seconds. Everything collapsed at once. The alien corridors, ribbed, pulsing, alive, lit up with hostile biosignatures. Siren-like howls echoed from deep within the walls. The remaining androids marked targets in every direction, but even with perfect coordination, the formations began to buckle. They were being overrun. Run, now, 1-4 shouted, dragging Metric over her shoulder. Her armor was scorched and leaking, one leg barely responding, but she moved with determined fury. Kevlar carried Glyph, his massive frame pushing forward through the flickering maze of bone metal and synthetic muscle. Blood smeared across his visor, but he didn't slow. Evac routes been rerouted, Pirate called. They're herding us. The shuttles, their only way off this hell, was still 6 decks up and 3 corridors over. The Wishmaker, Halcyon Drift, and Pursuer were in stable orbit, holding tight formation, waiting. Coffin Keeper's voice cut in over the comms, tight with strain. I see movement all around the hull. You've got a full vector of intercepts forming. Whatever's in there, it doesn't want you leaving. We're not asking permission, Sweets snapped. From the darkness above them, a shriek, in stereo. Something the size of a transport dropped through a ruptured ceiling duct, unfolded midair, and slammed into the lead drone. Plasma fire burst wide, sparks, screams. Pirate. Drone 04 gone, redirecting AI control to Volt. Harmony, Core, and Spectre were already returning fire. The drones converged, bottlenecking the corridor and buying seconds, but only seconds. 1-4 turned back long enough to throw a plasma mine. It detonated with a blue flash, blowing 3 creatures back, but 10 more surged in from the left. Crawling over walls, folding out of vents. Some looked like inverted spiders with human faces. Some were just teeth and speed. Sweets, go high. She didn't need the order. Already bounding onto a collapsed section of bulkhead, Sweets laid down cover fire with surgical precision, dropping hostiles as they scrambled toward the fallback corridor. Kevlar reached the corridor junction and smashed the override panel with his fist. There, shuttle bays that way. They sprinted. Pirate's drone held back just long enough to send a kinetic charge into the floor, collapsing part of the tunnel behind them. The monsters shrieked, twisted, and began climbing through the walls instead. Almost there, Kevlar grunted. The hatch blew open. Blistering wind and metallic ash greeted them as they spilled out onto the exterior surface of the alien mothership. The ground beneath their boots was slick and pulsing, alive with faint currents of bioelectricity. Towers of twisted organometal rose all around them like frozen screams. Behind them, howls. The corridor they'd fled belched a dozen creatures in pursuit, the wall itself sloughing open to birth more. Go, 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 Pirate barked, signaling his AI formation to fall into a rear shield arc. 1-4 hauled Metric with her one good arm, armor cracked and flaring warning glyphs. Metric, teeth grit, blood streaking her brow, kept her rifle up with one shaking arm, firing blind bursts behind them. Kevlar ran ahead, glyph slung over his shoulder, the wounded man groaning with every bounce. Nanites bubbled around his torn side, slowing the bleeding, reinforcing bone. We're in the open, 1-4 gasped. Cover fire now. Overhead, the sky split with 2 burning trails. Coffin Keeper's fighter drones screamed in from high orbit, their stabilizers hissing as they dipped beneath the debris field. Controlled by normal, they arced gracefully, then spun into a blistering strafing run. FSHHHHZZZTTT boom. Plasma rounds stitched the alien horde behind them. Whole clusters of creatures detonated mid-leap, their limbs flung into the dark like shrapnel. Others kept coming, shrieking, twitching, scuttling on all sides, but now Pirate's drones joined the fight, walking cannons laying down a synchronized arc of suppressive fire. Harmony, reallocate fire to the left ridge. Pirate commanded. Copy. Volt and Spectre rotating pattern. Sweets took the rear left flank, pivoting mid-stride, her rifle barking in staccato rhythm. Pace. Keep pace, she shouted. They're folding around the rear. The team didn't break stride. The shuttles came into view, parked 100 meters ahead, sleek against the darkened ridgeline of the alien ship. Their engines hummed in idle prep, remote piloted by the AI systems aboard the Pursuer and Halcyon Drift. Another monster dove from above, wings like torn sails, a skull-faced thorax clicking midair, and was cut in half by a fighter drone's rail shot. Thanks, Keeper, Kevlar shouted breathlessly. Don't thank me yet, came the reply through the comm. You've got another wave forming east. Move. They crossed the last platform stretch, Sweets pivoted, covering the ramp as Kevlar threw Blith into the shuttle's hold and turned to help 1-4 get Metric inside. A beast lunged. Too fast, too close. It would have reached them, if Spectre hadn't thrown itself into its path, self-detonating with a white-hot burst of energy. The shockwave hurled them into the shuttle. Ramp slammed shut. Engines ignited. Both shuttles blasted off, rising fast above the mothership as dozens more creatures poured out onto the surface below, roaring and writhing, as if the ship itself was trying to pull them back. Inside, Kevlar collapsed against the wall, chest heaving, Blith unconscious but stable beside him. 1-4 sat in silence, her armor still steaming, one hand gripping Metric's. Sweets leaned back, gun in her lap, eyes closed. "Well," she muttered, "we made it." From orbit, Coffin Keeper watched as the shuttles pierced back into vacuum. The Wishmaker and Halcyon Drift opened docking arms. Receiving both birds, normal reported. Minimal hull damage. Moderate organic residue. Coffin Keeper nodded once, jaw tight. "Bring them in. Prepare the hangar for quarantine." And below them all, the alien mothership began to pulse. Part 5. If Death Comes Knocking. Location: Carver 5 System, surface of Lingda Nova, temporary outpost. The storm had passed, if only briefly. The moon of Lingda Nova was cold, dry, and pale beneath its frozen clouds, circling the cracked world of Carver 5 like a sleepless guardian. It offered no warmth, only space, time, enough for the wounded to breathe. All three ships, the Wishmaker, the Halcyon Drift, and the Pursuer, touched down in a staggered triangle across the gravel plain beside an old corpse collector way station. The facility was long dead, glass burned from storms and memory, but its cargo base still held enough fuel cores and replacement nanite canisters to patch together another day of survival. Interior: Halcyon Drift, Med Bay. 1-4 lay under dim lights, her armor peeled back and hung like a husk beside the wall. Her left arm had been ruined, nanites still humming slowly through shattered tissue. Metric, unconscious in the adjacent pod, chest wrapped in dermal regenerators, skin pale but stable. Blith had been sedated, his lungs torn, one side stitched with artificial ribs and soft frame supports. All three were connected to a collector-grade nanite core, its interface pulsing with data. Sweets stood near, cleaning dried ichor off 1-4's gauntlet with surgical wipes. She hadn't spoken much since the mothership. Kevlar, still in partial armor, worked at the supply crates stacked near the wall. "They'll make it," he said quietly. "The Drift's medical grid is still intact." Sweets nodded. "They don't look like they made it." Location: Lingda Nova Outpost. They worked in silence. Snow and ash kicked over the ground as Pirate popped a panel open on one of the cryo-coil tanks and rerouted the core conduits. Kevlar and Sweets dragged a repurposed cargo sled over the ridge, stacked high with plasma cells, polycarb ration crates, and scrap shielding they scavenged from the wrecked outpost. Coffin Keeper didn't move far from the Wishmaker. His eyes never left the sky. "I'm telling you," Normal said through his helmet. "The Redding's back. It followed us. Well, go ahead and initiate the startup sequence. We need to get out of here as fast as we can if anything goes south." Pirate paused, still cloaked. "No, it wants to be seen." "Then we got to go," barked Coffin Keeper. "Team, let's move, we have unfriendlies en route." "I'm on it," said Pirate, eyes deep in a multitasking flood of data. He looked toward the orbiting ships. The Pursuer still rested like a sleeping knife above the field. The Halcyon Drift shimmered under active shielding, its recovery beacon glowing amber, pinging a single message on loop: "Severely wounded, rerouting to HQ, immediate intercept." "Program them both to leave," Coffin Keeper said. "Now." "I haven't debugged the Pursuer. It's still bleeding code," Pirate muttered, his hands working fast anyway. "She'll outrun anything, but if the drift doesn't make it, it won't be your fault," Kevlar said from behind him. We all knew the odds. The Halcyon drift lifted first, its wounded within, rising on quiet thrusters, and then it screamed toward the stars. The pursuer rose second, stuttering mid-climb, flickering in and out of trance-like protocol as Pirate's remote code stabbed the jump coordinates into place. "Okay, they just leaves us. Let's get this stuff loaded so we can get out of here. I don't want to be at this outpost any longer than I have to," growled Coffin Keeper. Then the sky tore open. The anomaly dropped out of nowhere, not like a ship, but like a scar reappearing on the skin of reality. It didn't shine. It didn't burn. It bled light, inverted geometry and shifting impossible angles. A whisper that became a scream behind their eyes. "Run code now," Coffin Keeper barked, even as he yanked the sled toward the Wishmaker's ramp. Normal was already interfacing with the two ships. "Pursuer is gone, jumping blind. Drift, 3, 2, the Halcyon drift vanished into a ripple of stars. The anomaly reached out. A spike of black inverted starlight lanced downward, and the Wishmaker, their own vessel, shook like it had been hit by God's tuning fork. Impact. Normal screamed. "Brace! Brace!" There was no time, no defense, no mercy. A second spike plunged from the sky, not light, not matter, but absence, a void shaped like intent. And the Wishmaker, once one of the sharpest blades in the Collector fleet, split down the middle. The ship detonated not with flame, but with silence. A soundless rupture that inverted its own scream. The shockwave hurled them. Pirate was flung into a ravine of fractured ice. Kevlar skidded across shattered obsidian until his helmet cracked. Sweet slammed into a cluster of supply crates, her shoulder dislocating with a sickening pop. Coffin Keeper didn't move, he simply vanished in the blast. The wreckage burned in a slow spiral of corrupted light, folded metal, collapsing gravity, memory flaking into particles. Then, the drop pod landed. The black pod had not landed so much as manifested, like a thought drawn into reality. No sound, no thrusters, no warning. It simply was, falling from nowhere like the anomaly itself had given birth to it. Spherical, matte black, ancient. It hissed open like a coffin under pressure. It hissed open in silence. From it stepped the Herald, tall, in armor etched with writhing glyphs that shimmered in ultraviolet. Its mask was blank save for a thin vertical slit, red and pulsing like a scar that breathed. It spoke, not in words, but in their language, a voice layered with echoes, each syllable vibrating deep into the skull. "You killed them, while they slept, while they emerged. You stacked their bodies in broken hallways and fire. Now I answer for them. I am Herald. I am Vengeance." Coffin Keeper took a single step forward, then the Herald moved. A blur. A pulse of negative force. Coffin Keeper flew backward, smashed into a melted segment of shuttle hull. He didn't rise. His helmet rolled, cracked and sparking. His chest plate caved in. Then the fight began. Kevlar didn't hesitate. He hit the Herald with a full burst of suppressive fire. The rounds struck, sparks danced, but the armor drank the kinetic force, each impact silenced by a dull thump like shooting into wet concrete. Sweets came from the right, flanking. Kevlar dropped his empty mag, slammed in a fresh one, and moved. The Herald met them mid-stride. It didn't draw a weapon. It was the weapon. It struck Kevlar with the back of its hand. The Collector flew 15 meters, crashing through a frozen boulder. His ribs broke with the sound of snapping planks. Sweets shouted and launched a concussive mine. It detonated mid-air. Smoke, static, shrapnel. When the air cleared, the Herald stood untouched. Sweets was already running. She fired her Fleckhead pistol point blank. A dozen spike rounds hit soft joints, elbow, knee, clavicle. The herald stumbled, just slightly. It looked down at the needles embedded in its plating. "Better," it whispered. It slammed a knee into Sweet's abdomen. Armor crunched. She fell but rolled with it, came up with a knife. Her last weapon. She slashed upward into the exposed side of the herald's neck. Black ichor sprayed. The herald staggered, and then it grabbed her by the throat. "Hey!" Pirate's voice cut through the frost and chaos. He stood, surrounded by his squad, 5 battle drones, armed, flying in formation. Behind him, his custom AI cadre pulsed in a shared uplink, harmony. "Volt, Null, Core, Spectre, let's dance, you ancient freak." The herald dropped Sweets. She hit the ground hard, choking, bleeding. Still, Pirate extended both hands. Holograms flared. Commands cascaded down his HUD. Tactile hacking mid-combat. His whole body became a conduit for strategy. The drones dove in. They struck in arcs, stun beams, cutting plasma, suppressive fire in geometric patterns. The herald twisted through them. Its arms moved like blades. It tore Null in half, shattered Volt with a backhand. Pirate directed Spectre into a feint, lured the herald left, and then brought a det charge up through Core's flank. The blast hit center mass. The herald went down. Smoke, crater, silence. Pirate stepped forward, rifle raised. His jaw was clenched. He was breathing hard. Then, laughter. Low, broken, wrong. The herald stood. Its mask was cracked, its armor sloughing off in jagged layers. But it smiled. It didn't have a mouth. But it smiled. It moved so fast no one saw the blow, only the aftermath. Pirate collapsed. His chest caved in, ribs inverted. His eyes flickered, then went dim. Psych. Pirate dug his claws into the herald. With one last effort he allowed all the electricity of his nanites to flow through him into the herald. It was enough energy to jump-start a cruiser-sized craft. The shock only jolted the herald in place for a moment. The herald grunted then flung his corpse aside. Kevlar dragged himself upright, blood matting his armor. Sweets was crawling, one leg limp behind her. They didn't beg. They didn't plead. They fought. Kevlar roared and tackled the herald. Sweets stabbed with her last knife. The herald crushed them both. The frost settled. The wind died. The herald stood over 3 bodies, Kevlar, Sweets, Pirate. It knelt. It began to collect them. Not gently, not cruelly, just, precisely, like items on a list. Then a sound, metal scraping metal. The herald turned. Coffin Keeper stood again, one eye swollen shut, breathing shallow, his side dented in. But standing. A beat. A silence. 2 killers facing each other across the grave of a team.